said, it's high praise.
Hey, we're about to be live on. Just
Oh,
having a
there
little
we go.
meltdown.
Hello, people of the internet.
Hello. Mine's not quite there yet
Okay,
on my end. There we go. All right. Shall we?
we shall.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Captain's Quarters, the unofficial Star Trek rewatch podcast where we are rewatching the entire Star Trek franchise, starting at the beginning of the official chronology. My name is Gabe, and I'm with my co captain, Jason. And today we're talking about Star Trek Discovery, Season 2, Episode 9, called Project Daedalus. How's it going, buddy?
Good, how are you? It's been a bit.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's been a little bit. We have another excellent episode to talk about, in my opinion. We'll get Jason's opinion in a sec. Let's do the synopsis and we can talk about it. All right. So this is via Memory Alpha fandom. Appreciate you guys over there. When the Discovery crew infiltrates Section 31's headquarters, suspicions arise that the crew may have a traitor in their midst. Burnham tries to help Spock, but her efforts don't go as planned. So, Admiral
That's it.
Cornwall,
Right.
Cornwall,
Great.
what?
No, nothing. So the synopses are usually longer, but
Yeah, that one was as bare bones as it gets.
okay, yeah.
Um, Admiral Cornwall comes on board in secret to the disco. She can't go to Starfleet with her concern about Section 31. Section 31 has this computer called Control that some logic extremists, I assume the Vulcan admiral in charge of Section 31 is among them. They want to augment control so that it has more say in Starfleet's strategic direction. So
Yeah.
currently, Starfleet admirals or Starfleet leadership inputs data in, and control gives them feedback and direction, but they still have agency and they still have judgment that they can use for themselves, and the stated goal is to utilize leadership's experience.
Mm-hmm.
But these extremists want to sort of take that away and give more control to control. And there's been a long arc this whole season with the Red Angel leading Disco around, and Spock learns that the Red Angel wants him to stop this enemy from destroying all sentient life in the universe or the galaxy, I guess. And Disco was led to this sphere where they got an enormous amount, hundreds of thousands of years worth of data about the galaxy. They downloaded that data. At one point, that data being on board was then broadcast to an unknown location. They thought Tyler was doing it, Ash Tyler, and
Wait, he wasn't?
we
What?
as audience, and then Oh, you're it wasn't him. No, we know previously when they suspected Tyler, and it was confirmed this episode that it was her. And we learn a lot about Arium in this episode. We learn that she wasn't always this android. She was a human with like a husband, and there was an accident, and she's basically a Darth Vader, where the machine apparatus is what like saved her. And but as a result, she her memory doesn't work, so she has to like manually delete and download memories. Whereas we do it, I think, when we sleep. That's when we encode things in our long term. That doesn't work for her. So she has to sit through. He does that every week. They're all pretty chummy, and but also when her eyes turn red, that's when the control, the virus, basically takes
Yeah.
her and uses her at Section 31. So at the same time, the Admiral shows supposed footage of Spock murdering the source code. It was, in fact, their facility, so it's a real video. There's also videos from Section 31 that they view, but then when they get to the Section 31, it's abandoned, everyone's dead, and we
Bum
learn
bum bum.
via holograms. Yeah, but then also the supposed long dead. So the
Mhm.
implication is that control, even though Section 31 was probably a proponent of augmenting control, um, control took over. So it was like a Skynet type thing.
Yep, totally.
It took over, killed the maker. Yeah. And
Yep.
so I suspect that control is the enemy that Spock pro control, somebody else control. That is the true enemy. But when they're on Section 31's base, it's Burnham and it's Arium. Arium has enough control to convey this to Burnham. She puts herself in an airlock and she says, "You have to kill me." Basically, you have to open the airlock.
Yeah.
And every Pike and Spock are telling Burnham, "You have to do it. It's the logical thing to do." Burnham doesn't want to, but eventually one of the other one of the other crew does open the lock. Arium goes out into space and dies in a very emotional scene. Before she does, she tells she tells Burnham it's all about you. So yeah, it was a tearjerker for sure, and still a lot of mystery. One thing got to give kudos to Jason is that Jason, I think, did a great job of analyzing Burnham's psychology and that of the world to an excessive degree, and she kind of carries the weight of the world on her shoulders to the point where it warps her own perception of like her role in things. and that would be true of the Klingon War,
Yeah.
and then her relationship with Spock, but then
y-
also the rift that like tore them apart. She always said that she did what she did because these extremists were after Burnham, but really they were after Spock. But her
Mm-hmm.
need to be the hero, she took
Mm-hmm.
on those feelings, and um, so that really manifest when Ariam wanted to die, but Burnham wouldn't do it. She's like, didn't want to. She was willing to risk even more, and um, so that was a poignant moment in the episode for sure. I really liked it. My only criticism would be I don't like when we first started talking about this show. I complained a little bit that we didn't meet the the crew, and Arian was one of those crew that I was
Yeah.
like, we don't know
Agreed.
anything about these people, and I think that's weird because I feel like Enterprise did a great job of like isolating each characters and giving them their own episodes and really got
Yep.
to know them.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
this one, I felt like there was like background characters, and
Yep.
then it felt like they kind of shoehorned in Ariam's backstory and
Yep.
and tried to shoehorn in like a meaningful relationship with the other characters, and I thought they did a good job with it. But when you like kind of reflect on it, you're like, well, it's only like one episode where I've grown to really care about this person,
Yeah.
and it was still very emotional, the little arc. But yeah, so anyway, what'd you think, man?
I agree. I agree with you. I love this. This was a really good episode, and I agree with you on um it's kind of I agree with you that we were I don't know jumped into like light speed or warp speed about Arium, and
Mm-hmm.
it could have helped that, like you said, it would have helped to build a little bit of the character and a little bit of the galaxy and a little bit of this universe by having her, play a little bit more of a role, or like has some more story behind her before this episode. But with that being said, I thought they did a really awesome job, and then in the end, so there are two scenes in particular that really, there are a couple of things actually that I think in this episode that were it makes sense to me, but at the same time, so one was the 3D chess game between um Spock and Burnham and Spock and Michael,
Mm-hmm.
which I found really, really interesting that, she had it felt like she had this preconceived notion of who he is and who he is, and you know sacrificing his rook, might not have been logical, but like, and maybe there was this, and maybe there is that tension of maybe he also felt that burden of knowing what the future might hold if they don't do something. And it was really fun to explore a little bit of that weight on his shoulders and the human and the Vulcan kind of both sides, he was failed by logic and he was failed by emotion and all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious on how if they're gonna play. No, I know. I'm which is interesting to see retroactively because it plays a role in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It does. It goes into when we go into Strange New Worlds. Um so yeah. So that was
With
awesome.
Spock?
Yeah, with Spock. It's not as it's not as
Okay.
it's not as the conflict isn't as heavy, but it does play a role into Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is fun to see that, oh, okay, that's where we start to get that a little bit. And then
See, I
stuff
didn't
like,
even put it together that Spock was in there in Strange New Worlds.
yeah, he's in Strange New Worlds. So,
Okay.
and that, which is gonna be cool. Okay, so now I'm getting, and then this episode also, oh, before I go into that, I wanted to say when she couldn't let Arium go, and it took Commander Nan's, um, you know, her finger to, punch in the
Yeah.
buttons, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
I was like, that's incredibly fitting, but at the same time, there was a little bit of me as a viewer that said, is this because she wants to save Arium? And it might be a little bit of both. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts were. Is that is she trying to save Arium and is she trying to figure out the future with saving her with Arium? Or was this just not her ability to let it go? Which might be one and the same thing. And obviously, the flip side of the same coin.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to me whether it was like more of a personal thing, like she didn't want to lose a friend or colleague. And that was the other thing too, is because it happened so fast that this episode happened so fast, we didn't get real time to like build a deeper connection between Arium and Burnham, Arium and Tilly. And so I was a
That's a
little
great
reticent
point.
about that. But
Yeah.
they did a fantastic job to try to do that in one episode, and I thought they did a great job with it. But yeah, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, that's a great point because we don't really know. We They had little tidbits of Arium and Tilly and um, some of the other characters in Arium, and you could tell that Tilly and Arium were chummy,
Yeah,
but you didn't really get the sense of her and Burnham. So you're right, there is ambiguity there, but I think you're right. I think it is Burnham's twisted sense of it's like it's like a psychological thing.
it
You
is. It
know,
totally is. It fits
yeah,
the profile for sure
yeah.
of is it the parents being killed and she couldn't save them or the abandonment when it that happens as well. And I don't remember. And I don't want to play, amateur couch psychologist,
Mhm.
but
Well, I think this episode kind of invites you to do that.
yeah,
And
true.
yeah, and I do think that people who carry excess shame, they a lot of times, and this episode basically says as much. It's that you adopt a belief system where you have to believe that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. And because that gives you control,
Yeah.
because then you walk around believing that all these decisions that you make are going to insulate you
Yeah.
from the horrible chaos, you know, accidents, things that are totally out of control. And this episode basically says as much, that Burnham didn't want to believe that just this horrible thing just happened,
Right, right.
and she can't, and because that's a scarier thought, to believe that we're all just at the whim of chaos and terrible calamities.
Yeah.
That is scarier than taking on the shame of I failed.
Right,
It's
right.
like safer to think that you caused this, because that gives you an out, because then you can say, but it won't happen again, and all I have to do is just constantly try to follow the right path. And I think that's a common thing that young people run into when they have a lot of shame and they get into those cycles.
Interesting.
Yeah. And yeah, I've had a therapist tell me that actually, and I think that is how they phrase it. They say good things happen to people, bad things happen to bad people. That's the belief you have, rather than the horrible process of accepting that sometimes terrible things just happen, and and then you don't deal with it. You don't deal with the real grief of it and
Right.
the real process of getting through it. Instead, you put a band-aid on it and say, no, it was my fault. I should have done this, I should have done that.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's the latter. I do think
Okay.
yes, I do think she cared about Ariam.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No question about that.
but I
Whether
do think
it
her
was the, sorry, go ahead.
hesitation was no, I do think her hesitation was the latter, which was her own shame. But I don't know. I don't know if you answered where you landed on that. Where do you think it was?
I don't know. I have a tendency to agree with you though.
Mhm.
On that point, I do think that there was this, I think it was her overt sense that she has to save, put, we can solve this. We can do this together. We don't have to sacrifice you. Um, but yeah. And then the other thing, so I'm starting to develop. Oh, what are you drinking?
Oh yeah, same thing last
Woo!
time.
Okay,
Yep.
there you go.
Jason and I got to spend some time together
We
last week,
did.
and he got to experience the joys of athletic hazy IPA non-alcoholic brew, not beer, non-alcoholic brew.
Non-alcoholic beer. And not a sponsor yet, but they could.
We're open to it.
We're
I'm
up
open to
to
it.
it.
I don't know about
Absolutely. Oh
Jason.
my gosh. But anyways, so I'm getting a sense of where this series is gonna go. And I was like, it's really interesting if they decide to go that way. If I think my spidey senses are on point or completely off the ball, but we'll see. We'll see. And I'm a little surprised that Starfleet would rely on this on Skynet, if you will, or control. I'm
Hmm.
really I understand that it's a tool and that we use tools all the time,
Hmm.
but it is kind of, yeah, it's one of those scary thoughts of that they would
Yep.
rely on, because I mean, look at what it did. It manipulated video, it killed the upper level management. No, the
Hmm. Yeah.
leadership at Section 31, just because
Hmm.
they didn't agree with it, right? And so it's telling. And I'm like, ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, so do you think that control is self-aware, or do you think somebody is pulling the strings of control separate from Section 31 and
No,
Starfleet?
I think Control is self-aware.
Okay.
And just because, and that's what it was trying to get from Arium. And um the because Arium was infected by the probe from the future,
Hmm. Yeah.
but let's not we forget T2, and it's not
Yep.
exactly similar, but let's not forget there's one more chip uh
Mm.
in the present, and it's called USS Discovery.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is why they go into the future. I wasn't going to say this, but I will. I
Okay.
think this is why they're going to have to jump to the future, is because if this control, unless they're able to stop it, like unless they're able to like kill control or destroy control. Oh, you know what? Now that I think about it, if they let control, yeah, unless they figure a way to stop it or pull it back in some fashion. I think this is why Discovery has to jump into the future because Control wants that information that Discovery has in its data banks from that entity that has had thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands, like thousands of years of knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's what it wants. And that's how I
Int-
think we get to that future that Spock sees, where it kills all sentient life. And that makes sense to me.
so you think the future version of Control is the enemy that Spock is pursuing, the one that wants
Yeah,
to kill sentient
it
life?
is this version of Control. Yeah, and that's what it wants is the
Hmm.
data from Discovery. I was going to say Enterprise. Discovery. And that's
So
why I
then,
think they have to jump into the future, whatever, however many thousands of years. I think it's a
yeah.
1,000 years that we jump into the future.
Okay.
And I think it's coming soon. I think
Okay.
we'll I think we'll be moving over to Strange New Worlds.
Ooh.
Probably the Cage first, and then
Okay.
Strange New Worlds in fairly
Okay.
short order. If
Wow.
we stick with this timeline thing.
I literally just got goosebumps thinking about that. There's something so exciting about moving on to another another franchise to me.
It's really interesting that we're gonna have to come back to Star Trek Discovery like years later.
Oh wow. Yeah, we might have to talk about that. We might have to strategize if that's the right move. I think it is.
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Time for another time.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah,
And I do want to know like what is your read on Spock's um dismantling Burnham's psyche and motives and kind of, you know, going for the jugular of like, hey, it's your fault with the Klingon War. And
yeah.
what do you think his intentions were there? To create separation or to
No, 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 no. I think I think I think there was a little bit of misplacement there. I think there was, but I also think there was a douse of cold water and some truth behind it. Because remember in the end, he comes back and he said, let's play chess after the whole entire thing. So one, I do think that he's in a very emotional state that because his frustrations, I think basically because he can't figure out what's going on at the moment,
mhm,
and he lashed out. I think a lot of times, it's a toxic thing in relationship, but when there's, when someone is can't figure out something out or frustrated or whatever the case might be, and you lash out to the closest person to you.
yeah, okay,
I think that's number one, but more so, I think there was a little bit of tough love there and like a little bit of cold water that she desperately needed. I don't want to say that I'm a Spock apologist, even though, I think it's well documented. He's one of my favorite characters in all of literature, fiction, whatever. But anyways, um, I think at the same time, it because it plays out later in that episode, he's like, you have to like make the sacrifice press the button, eject her out. It's the logical thing to do. I think it was just a dose of cold water of her own psyche that she has to kind of deal with. And I
Yeah.
don't know if she did it that
Okay.
well. What about
Got
you?
it. I was I was relying on you,
Oh,
honestly,
okay.
because I couldn't get a read on it. I thought maybe he was playing her. I thought maybe he was doing the same thing to her, what she did to him when she called him a half breed or whatever, which
Agreed.
was,
I think there is some of that, but I think it's more he was frustrated and can't figure out like the future, and
yeah.
logic has failed him, emotions have
Okay.
failed him,
Hmm.
all that stuff. But there was also like this dose of cold water where you're like, no, you're not as special as you think.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And you
you
can't,
and
I'm sorry. I meant to say
yeah.
you can't, I think his, I think his broad point was that you can't save everybody. You're not
Right.
Superwoman
Right.
as much as you think
And
you are.
and you operating as if you are is actually hurting you and everyone around
Yes, exactly.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was any like real harm, maliciousness, or, backlash to that.
Well, okay. And then now that we know that Spock is your favorite character across
I said
all mediums,
one of them. Yes.
what is your assessment of this iteration of Spock as far as continuity with the Spock that you
Good
know and
question.
love from previous series and movies?
I think, I mean, other than like, his half sister, Michael Burnham,
Hmm.
and that's going to be really interesting how they tie that together, like why we don't hear about them.
Yeah.
I just have this sinking feeling that it's like you are ordered to keep this a secret, and then like,
Yeah.
you, when this all closes in my mind, like it's a file that says, classified
Yeah.
top men, top men. Okay, for those Indiana Jones fans, um, I like it. I really like it. I like how I love how he's, I love Ethan Peck and the way he's played him. And I think, yes, we get the more emotional Spock that we usually don't get, but I think that's just part of his growth. It's just how young he is, and I find it exciting.
Cool. I like that. For me, I see, I just haven't seen enough of the other Spock to make
Okay.
a call.
Okay.
To me,
We
though, he
will soon, I
never,
think.
yeah. I don't know how much older the Nimoy version is supposed to be than the one we're seeing. How much time has passed. But they seem very different to me. My initial
Yeah.
impression is that the Nimoy version never ever showed emotion ever. And this guy is kind of a loose cannon.
Yeah. A
So
little bit.
yeah. So I don't know. I'm gonna save my judgment until I have a leg to stand on.
Okay. Okay.
And then I'm glad you brought up the chess thing. So as you know, I'm a bit of a chess nerd.
Yes.
Really disappointed that they went with like the three-tiered chessboard made up futuristic version of chess and still called it chess. They didn't call it Starfleet chess or whatever, Vulcan
No, they do
chess.
call it 3D chess. They do call it 3D chess.
They do.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Okay.
They do.
Because well, if they do, then they also call it just chess.
Yeah,
Like he
because I
says,
think that's
let's
what
play chess.
I think we're supposed to just take it as like this is the version that we play now.
Yeah.
all across the board
Hmm.
in the future. But yeah, they do call it 3D chess.
Well, okay, so how far in the future are we? 200 years? 300 years?
At this point, 22. Yeah, I think we're like 200 and some years.
Okay. Well, just so you know, the modern version of chess that we play now
Yes, sir.
has been played in its current iteration since like the 1400s.
Right.
So,
Okay.
they call it the immortal game.
Right.
Not because it doesn't change, but that is what they call it.
Yeah.
But
So like that, even going
yeah.
back, so I it's awesome that you're um it's awesome that you're bringing this up because I know your love for the game. Um or your affinity for the game.
Hmm. Hmm.
So like all the moves haven't changed
And the pieces, yeah.
in the pieces.
Yeah, I believe that
Wow.
so the game is way older than the 1400s.
Right. Yeah, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But there was, it had different names and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I think one of the final like rule adaptations was how I think it was the queen and the bishop move. And
Okay.
like once that was set, then it's basically been the same game ever since.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
there's
Wow.
this weird French move called en passant.
En passant. Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's more modern,
Okay.
but that's a very minor tweak.
Right.
So it's basically the same thing for what is that, 650 years
Yeah.
or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. 600
Or
plus for
no,
sure. No,
or is it 550?
500. 500.
Yeah,
You said
550.
14th
Yeah.
centuries? Yeah, so
Yeah.
500-ish
Yeah.
years. So yeah.
So, and it's not a thing that changes a lot. So that part, but I'm glad that you caught they called it 3D chess. That does make me feel better.
So they call it 3D chess in different versions of the show in different
Oh,
franchises.
okay.
So that's why so it's a game that's stuck around for a long time. It goes back to the original series.
Now I like it. Now I'm on board. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I would give this episode, I'm gonna give it, I loved, me, man. I love the sweeping emotional
Yeah,
aspect of TV and movies. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
that's me
yeah,
to the core. I'm very emo in that regard.
yeah.
And like the very moving music, that whole thing. I'm a total sucker for that. I actually watched this episode twice, and both times I got choked up at the end.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that carries a lot of
Me
weight
too.
for me.
Me
For
too. Me
me,
too.
yeah.
Me
So
too.
I'm tempted to give it higher because of that, but because of we were talking about the shoehorning of the character development, I gotta
Yep.
deduct some points. So I'm gonna go with an 86%.
Okay. Okay. So I think you and I are pretty close here. It's a 3 pips. It's a commander's ranked episode. It's very good. It is message in a bodily kind of deal because of all the things that we had to like warp speed to gain that emotional connection to Ariam.
Yeah,
But again, other than that, it was a fantastic episode, and I'm very excited to see where we get to go next.
cool. Also, wasn't a huge fan of the blade mines. That
The Blade Mines.
seems like those
Oh,
at Section 31 base.
yeah, 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 yeah,
I
yeah, 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 yeah.
it's like I was like, I mean, come on,
I don't.
you've got these photon
I get
torpedoes
it. Yeah, I get it.
and a metal blade is gonna do that
Yeah,
damage.
I get
I
it.
don't
I
buy it.
get it. I get that. I get that. There's sometimes where a lot of the like weapons and like things that I'm like, I don't, yeah, I don't.
I feel like they just wanted to kind of mix it up,
Yeah.
and
So
so
ever since J.J. Abrams broke canon,
Hmm.
I guess, and we get rapid fire weapons that are more standard. Um, yeah, it just changed the whole. I just don't. It kind of, I wish they went back to the original. You know, weapons on a Starfleet ship are more defensive than offensive, but it's
Ah,
very niggly.
I see. Okay. Well, anything
And
else
I
with
know,
this episode?
hang on. I have to
Yeah,
address
yeah.
this right real quick. I know, I know the Defiant became was a thing way before J.J. Abrams was, but as you know, Star Trek fans, that was classified as a warship, the first Starfleet
Oh,
warship. So that classification, I give it a pass that it had rapid fire phasers and photon and
interesting.
quantum torpedoes. So
Okay,
before I get
that's
too much
interesting.
like negative comment of like he has no idea what he's talking about. The Defiant had rapid fire. Yeah, I know.
But to your point, it sounds like they pointed out it's the first.
Yeah, it was like a
Yeah,
warship. It wasn't a
yeah,
standard class. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. Well, anything else with this episode?
No, I think we covered it.
Do you want to talk about the acolyte?
Yes. Is that what? Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Is that why you wanted to keep this short, just out of curiosity?
No, no, I just have an early morning.
Oh, okay. That's what I
So,
thought. That's what I
yeah,
thought. Okay, but yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, I don't know what the last time